Uh, Good afternoon, Aristo.
Good morning, Ron. How are you? Everything
I'm
seems
good.
fine.
Yeah,
All
we,
right.
we've already been having a preliminary discussion, and I'm going to just go ahead and let you launch in to answer the question that you have and then continue with what we were talking about.
Okay. Today's topic is about relationships. It kind of takes off where your video today about the one posted today about relationships and sexuality and all of this went on. Now, I haven't really talked about relationships myself on video too much, but I think today is a very good day to get deeper into the topic. However, I'd like to weave it with some of the previous stuff that we've discussed, as well as some questions one person asked. First, they wanted me to clarify about the Grand Cross a little bit. And that's just 3 words. Basically, there are 2 issues with the Grand Cross. The first issue is the conflict between collective charging. We're all charged collectively. The transformation, the challenges, we're all electrified. Things are moving into chaos. And your personal will. What is your purpose in life? How do you serve yourself and others in life? And where do you focus your personal will, your intention? And this needs to balance with the collective charge. That's one issue. The second issue is your comfort zone in manifestation as a human being versus the karmic challenges you face to transcend into outside the box and into your divine potential. You cannot negate your comfort zone for the divine potential, and you cannot negate the divine potential for your comfort zone. You need to find the balance there. These are the 4 issues, basically, that are 2 juxtaposed currents. Now, the thing is, this combined with the eclipse altered the timeline. You can sense this maybe, that after this period of the eclipse and the crazy chaos, one area of your life, at least, because these, you have to compare the Grand Cross and the eclipse in an astrology chart depending on the person's birth chart. It affects us differently. We resonate to these things slightly in specific areas of our lives more than other areas. We will find them emerging. So in any case, every individual has shifted their timeline, and that is manifest in certain areas of their lives more than others. They can see it. The timeline cannot shift into timeline 1 abruptly. We will shatter everything because we resist. We don't know where the balance point between our comfort zone and our karmic challenges, for example. In your discussions, you're going back and forth on this. If you push yourself too hard, you can get hurt. If you become too complacent, you can stagnate. We don't know how to relate to the collective. Everybody's freaking out, and so are we, so we push back against them. But at the same time, we need to honor our own desires. You can't go out serving others and be a sacrifice and end up doing anything constructive. At the same time, you can't insulate your desires from what's going on in the collective. They're both connected, and we need to find, and we're challenged to find these balance points. The universe basically says, hey, these are the issues here that you're facing in some area of your life, and the new moon, the eclipse has come in to basically jumpstart the collective, to prioritize these issues, and in order to stimulate new probabilities, to stimulate a turning into timeline 1. This is the first of 4 eclipses, so there's going to be 4 turning points. This one seemed to have been the most drastic. I don't know the configuration.
Haven't you been 2 already, though? Wasn't there one at the middle of April, and then another one toward the end of April?
The one toward the end of April is a solar annular eclipse. Actually, no, there was only one in April, I think, lunar eclipse. It occurs on the new moon.
Oh, 1 lunar and 1 solar, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I understood.
Yeah, the solar annular eclipse, a partial one, basically was over Antarctica. So it's shown over the Indian Ocean, basically the South Indian Ocean, and which is a resonant area that's very important because, you know, the whole event structure around that crazy Malaysian flight 370 or whatever, and the American island in the middle of the Indian Ocean where there's a lot of stuff going on.
Diego or something like that?
Yeah, Diego Garcia.
Yeah, no, I said it backwards.
And there's a lot of stuff, a lot of advanced technologies hidden on that island. They're messing with the planet, and that's why the cosmos. And it's not because the cosmos says, "Oh, they're messing with the planet." This is synchronistic. They've been attracted to this area because there's a kind of open wound or a portal or something that they're able to situate themselves. Just like a cancer cell will find the weakest organ or stuff like that, and it's related to some zone before the Atlantean submergence that has to do with Indian mythology, etc. Side issue. Anyways, this has a lot to do with relationships. Well, the solar eclipse reinitializes our energy body and our life force. This solar eclipse, when it hits the Earth's axis and that area of the Indian Ocean, can do so, and it follows the lunar eclipse because our subconscious is ready to accept it. Everybody on Earth in some way or another has been forced to face something. And the thing is, we tend to interpret the word facing as something dire. It doesn't have to be dire. It's apocalyptic. Oh, apocalypse. The Matrix says, beware of revelations. They're going to kill you. Or you're going to suffer. The scorpion, ram-headed scorpions with armor plates and poison are going to come out and sting you. The Earth is going to turn blood red. I don't know what. These things are boogie-man stories. They tell children these stories to keep them from doing something. They told the Grimm fairy tales were boogie-man stories. They were folklore to keep the children from going into the Black Forest because of the plagues and the starvation. There were cannibals there. Don't go into the forest. The wolf is going to eat you. The Hansel and Gretel stories, all of these stories and other stories were made to make you fear royalty. Royalty has magic. They're the ones that the nature spirits listen to, even though the deeper mystical implication was that we are all royalty and that the prince is basically the human heart and the king is the human heart maturing through the human body. Finding the princess, there's a lot of sexual symbolism in fairy tales. Okay. So you've hit the nail on the head basically in this video. Everything is sexual. The problem is we have no clue what the fuck sexual is. No pun intended. We either tend to over-spiritualize it or we make it pornographic. We tend to moralize about it. And the reason that there are so many rules about sexuality is not, if you look at ancient peoples, they're not hung up sexually. What they're hung up on is having, taking care of other people's bastards, so-called. This occurred after the agricultural revolution. People stopped, said, this is my piece of land, I'm going to cultivate it, and I'm working on it, and I'm going to feed my kids from it. When everybody was a nomad and, there was more of a free society. It didn't matter who the father was, basically, as long as you knew who the mother was. The mother took care of the children, and all the mothers hung together, and the children were all growing up together. It was like a collective. These are matri-lineal societies that exist in Africa today. They're not matriarchal. The women don't rule, so to speak, but the bloodline is determined by the mother. And the mother's family basically continues, and everybody helps and all of that. There's little jealousy, but it's not non-existent in such societies. The matrix, the establishment, I listened to this on Alex Jones the other day. The establishment sends anthropologists to figure out how these societies work, and then they ruin them. They create infighting and destroy them. They actually make papers that go to the CIA that send agents, and I've seen this in Greece. They've learned the psychology of the people, and they've tailored the economic hitmen to do a certain formula that's different than how they do it in other countries. So people need to know who they are. But the thing is, if you channel your true sexuality, all bets are off. They can't touch that area. They're flipped out where sexuality is concerned. Notice they're all pedophiles. They can't really handle adult energy, sexually speaking. They feel out of control, so they have to do, they're necrophiles. They have to do dead people. They have to torture people to show that, they hate sexuality. They hate creation. And sexuality, as you say, is creation. The psychopath has no involvement with life, so they are a cancer. They are alienated. That's a terrible situation. They're not to be hated for this. But if we are to find what you might call a cure, a healing, sexuality is the key. And whether it's, and it's not limited to the physical. Your energy body is sexual. You can be sexual with somebody without physical contact. However, a full
I prefer the physical contact, thank you.
Well, obviously, but I'm saying that sexuality is a 24/7 matter. You're not going to be in physical contact 24/7.
That's true.
Physical contact is like a peak. Let's put it this way. The way things are right now, you live your life, so-called, that you pass, but your energy body goes on. If you have engaged in certain alchemical processes or mature, esoterically speaking, your energy body can last until you move into another incarnation. Or it dissolves, and then they all dissolve until one little kernel remains, and that builds up toward another incarnation. The fact remains that the subtle levels of our being live longer and are less subject to the discontinuity of death than the manifest, more dense levels of our being. So sexuality in your body, you can't really keep going forever and ever and ever, whether a woman or a man, 24/7. It's 9/11 right now. 24/7 is not viable. But the energy body is always sexual. And I'm saying this because if even children are sexual with their energy bodies. I'm saying so it's not pedophilic to be sexual with a child with your energy body, or strange to be with a tree or the ground or the sky. This is what mystical experience is all about. Mystical experience is a sexual experience. Not all sexual experience is mystical experience, because people confuse pornographic experience with sexual experience. Pornographic experience is not bad, but it's basically sex devoid of the mystical, deeper energy element. If you've ever seen pornography, they engage in sex in such a way that seems to create a barrier between the couple. A barrier.
It's mechanical.
It's like this, It's a pounding, a hammering, And if you look at the popular literature, I've noticed that women and men tend to, their views, the promoted views of people that are supposed to be honest opinions, vary according to certain trends. These trends are promoted by the establishment. Notice tattoos, for example. Back in the day when you were young, women did not like men with tattoos for the most part. When I was in college, if I put a tattoo on, the girls I knew would say, I'm not going to speak to you again. Then a few years later, all of a sudden, you saw this being promoted. Usually it started from, bikers, people in prisons, the strippers and all of this, and eventually it became glorified until you hear everybody, oh, wow, are people wait in line to go into tattoo parlors? And I'm wondering how this changed, I've always wanted one. I was born that way. I was born wanting a tattoo. And it's like people don't realize that, look, man, the peer pressure, even when it doesn't seem like peer pressure, is a big deal. And peer pressure doesn't begin with your peers. It begins with the media. The media is causing artificial peer pressure. And the thing is, part of this is to control sexuality. Whether they're involved in esoteric mindsets or not, they are afraid of liberated sexuality. And thus they took over the conservative movement and they took over the liberal sexual movement. They warped the one and they completely rammed the other. So anybody who basically did not fall for the liberal sexual movement, hook, line, and sinker, instead of meeting it halfway and then saying, well, I have to make some decisions about this. Anyone who said, and they turned spirituality into the same thing, because you have religious people who are in religions are regulated sexually. Every religion regulates sexuality. Some cults regulate it in the opposite direction. Either you have to just have sex with a cult leader or with a certain group of people or in a certain way, or, it's orgiastic, and people go to tantric retreats where some people say, I really hated the experience.
I hated my only tantra workshop that I ever went to. I had an opportunity at the end of the workshop. Everybody went to a nude beach. I went in the car and waited for everybody else to come out. I didn't even go to the nude beach. It was such a horrible experience. I went with a particular lady, and when I got there, when we were finally, after the introduction and all that stuff and the opening exercises, just dealing with each other's energy on a group level, when we were supposed to finally pair up and do individual work, my date or my partner announced publicly that she had met somebody else there and she was going to partner with him instead of me. And she did that publicly. I mean, that was the most humiliating experience, one of the most humiliating experiences of my life. And I had to ride home with this woman. She was the one that was driving home. So I was waiting. I got her keys and I waited in her car for her while she went off with this guy that she just met. So.
And some people do that kind of thing under the pretext and claiming that I'm just being honest. I'm following my desires. And then you listen to that and you say, those fucking desires, God damn it, we got to just put an end to them or control them. They're ruining us. You know, this is how sometimes our own judgments can come up and manifest somewhere. But then again, the New Agers, that's a label. People can take that and turn it into a judgment itself. It's like, look, on the road to Valhalla or Jerusalem or wherever you're going, to the promised land, you're going to meet a lot of crap. You're going to meet a lot of pitfalls. You're going to meet, and because you're attempting not to create bridges, but to learn how to build them. You know, you got to learn what your bridge materials are. So you're going to find bad materials and you're going to have to say no to some things and you're going to have to say yes to some things. Usually we don't realize this till after the fact because only, you know, and it doesn't help when you're in the shit, when you're in the middle of this kind of thing of being betrayed, of being lied to, of falling into dishonesty. All you need to really remember is that, look, you know, something is not being done right here. And it's up to me to figure out what it is and to trust my own feelings. This experience admittedly sucks, but there is a baby in the bathwater. I'm here for a reason. The experience sucks, and it's my job to basically discern, to figure out how to be true to myself. I mean, we're conditioned to lie to ourselves. We're conditioned to think lies are truth. So how do we figure out what the truth is? All of this is part of that process. Once we reach the point where we can, you know, and sometimes, you know, if you're under 40, for example, all mystical traditions, most of them say, look, you know, it's best to do all of these things, accelerated tantra and all of this after you're 40. At least one of the partners should be over 40. Why? Because when you're, and it's not a rule, but this is the justification. If you're under 40, your body is geared toward reproduction. So sexuality is basically harnessed by nature for you to have kids. Thus, your motivations, subliminally speaking, are going to be connected to the reproductive instinct. This can create problems. Your desire basically is not completely conscious, and it's not meant to be. You're youthful because there are unconscious forces for you to be in a position of optimally reproducing. This is the way biology basically keeps us going until we can jumpstart ourselves. After 40 or thereabouts, we begin to, the reins of nature, so to speak, begin to loosen up. And as we get older, we start complaining about it. But basically, instead of looking at the opportunity of, oh, it's time for us to grab the reins. It's time for us to plug ourselves in. It's time for us to reverse this process of aging or, you know, sexual depletion by rehooking up with life consciously. We don't know how to do that yet completely, but there are some things. Now, personally, I engaged in some of the practices that promise such things and which I have seen work. And before we talked, I mentioned about some of my own esoteric experiences. When somebody asks for a soulmate, I'm speaking about a man, but also a woman, because these days the primary divinity in manifestation is the feminine. The feminine side of God is the primary divinity. We have learned to worship the masculine, emitting, light-emitting side of God. The New Age speaks about mythologies where souls have come to this planet and they were drawn into some black hole or whatever the hell, you know, they put it. What I'm seeing is a story about sperm meeting an egg. If you look at the planet as a feminine manifestation, like an egg, spherical, and everything in it kind of spherical, you have this one manifestation, and then you have all these sperm-like souls coming in, or sperm-like presences. They don't have to be human souls. It can be every life form on the planet that ever emerged. The planet at a certain point was devoid of physical life. And this is basically the theory of panspermia, too, that says it all came in on a meteor. But it doesn't have to. Which is another sperm-like thing. You know, it's got a tail and a head. So you have these souls, and people identify with the souls and say, well, I'm a soul in a human body. The body is basically a vehicle. It's like a biosuit. That's like a child saying, well, I'm really a sperm that's grown up in this crappy black hole of my mother's egg and locked in this stupid womb of that bitch, and I'm trying to get out and kill her in the process and escape from that stupid place, that prison, you know, prison planet womb zone. And it's like, look, you little fetus bastard, you have to grow up as a fetus before you can be born. You don't want to be aborted. Everybody's crying, abort me, I want to escape. You know, and it's completely insane. And obviously, if there's a brain tumor in the little fetus, it's going to start acting that way. And there is. And these tumors come from the mother herself because the whole planet is afflicted. And we have to ask ourselves, well, were we actually free of affliction, or were we too, a sperm isn't able to realize what's wrong with it, its own genetic defects? We idolize our Father in heaven. You know, oh, Dad, with your holy sperm, you know, you really gave it to the bitch, and now it's time for us to go back home and gain our inheritance. It's like, come on, man, you're a child of your mother and your father. How can you deny one parent, you know, without going crazy? So the thing is, as people begin to accept their desire, because the name of the goddess is desire, you know, if you want to put a name to
I thought it was Diana.
Huh? Well, that's the moon. That's the moon goddess.
Oh, okay.
That's the goddess of reflection. I even forget what that means, but all of these things mean about life and things like that. The same thing. Kali means darkness, but the darkness, the life force, all of this is indistinguishable from the subjective experience of desire when you're talking about sentient beings. And desire has all kinds of manifestations. The masculine God, which isn't masculine in a biological sense, because biologically we're all feminine. You know that the Y chromosome basically is an X chromosome without certain things. Certain
leg
genes,
cut off.
with a leg cut off, exactly. Genes are repressed in an X chromosome and it becomes a Y chromosome. Men or women with certain genes turned off. If you end up and the establishment is trying to feed us chemical to turn those genes back on because they're trying to demonize the masculine. Because one of the genders has to go, and it's easier to control humanity if everybody's feminized. If you masculinize people, they'll just die off in a weird way, and they don't want that to happen outside of their control. And speaking of the ones they're going to let live after they do away with the 6 billion, according to their storyline. But the point is that the spirit aspect is the primordial masculine, and it's radiating and all of this. And you cannot create life with sperm alone. You know, that's basically it.
Nor ovum alone.
Nor ovum alone. Yes, you can create life with ovum alone. It's called parthenogenesis.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And it existed long before sexual reproduction. However, every offspring is a clone of the mother. You cannot create variations without both male and female. You cannot create variety, you cannot create individuality, you cannot, it's like in the spirit realm. Souls are basically all reflections of each other. There is no contrast in the spirit realm. They're all one. Eventually, you know, very, very little contrast. There's a little feminine in the spirit realm, and then you have more contrast. The more closer you get to the material realm along the spectrum, the chakras basically are a microcosm of that, the more contrast and variety you have. So in either case of the polarities, you have singularity. In fact, you know, the male and the female themselves were a singularity that broke apart in order to experience polarity. Two different sides of the same coin, left and then flipped over to see each other. And then have sexual contact, not refusion. So sex is the key, but universal sex, sex in the full holistic meaning. And so all of our desires are sexual. And in my case, for example, if I want a relationship, I have to speak to the goddess about it. Now, most people take that literally. For somebody who's engaged in yoga, meditation, whatever, the same way you pray to God, you pray to the goddess, only the difference is that instead of a kind of enlightening peace, it goes deep into the desired nature. And if you can go deep into the desired nature without shame and carry the light, because this is what happens in Kundalini Yoga too, to answer another question, and why people have problems there. Because they try to raise their energy upward in a masculine way. They try to shoot upward, so to speak, in an intense energy to get it over with. People treat spirituality often like they do their sexuality, in a masculine, let's get off of it. Now, women are almost like that too. I've been reading, you're taking too long. Before it used to be, you're not taking long enough. So it's really strange, and part of it is because the tantra that I see that has been formalized isn't even the stuff that the Indians do. It was made by hung-up Victorian English people, first of all, because it was the only way they could legitimize getting laid, and second, we're occultists, we're Eastern religion adoptees, and that's how we get laid. And second of all, it's because the people who are into it are therapists. They're not really mystics. They have no clue of the deeper levels. They don't even believe those are real. So you look at things from another perspective. You open up, if you're a spiritual person, if you're going to raise Kundalini or anything like that, even without the technique or the name, you open up to the heavenly energies first. And the heavenly energies are going to pass through 3 doorways within your body. The first is in the head, and it involves the ego. You are challenged, not must, forget that, accept the ego for what it is. God accepts your ego. God is not condemned, oh, that's the ego, Well, first of all, you're illuminating the ego. That's what's going on when you take down the energies. These energies are not basically transforming in a manifest manner. They're illuminating. This is the true apocalypse. The true apocalypse is painless. The tribulation comes after the apocalypse because that's when things start moving. But if there's ample preparation and grounding of the light, so to speak, then the apocalypse can occur smoothly. As I mentioned in my previous video with the analogy that changes can occur in a liquid fashion. Allow yourself to dissolve, to not be attached to structure, but your substance is very important. So it can slosh around like water instead of shattering. And you move from the head, once you accept your own personality and ego, and you can open up to whatever you're experiencing, you move into the heart. Heart means you accept your relationships with others, with your environment. You accept the feeling of yourself in relation to others. And that means not accepting, means agreeing with everything they say. It doesn't mean that, you have to embrace and love everybody. It just means where you are now. If you're fucked up, accept that you're fucked up. And when I say fucked up, it's not a derogatory term. It means you feel like a victim. It means you feel hurt. Just accept that. Because that's how you are, without having to say, well, the implications of this mean that I have to go kill people or I have to kill myself, or, just forget about that. Let the light come in. That's what grace means. Grace is free. That's why bankers hate God, because grace is free. They can't put a label on it. They can't put interest on it. They can't cause debt from it. So there's no such thing as karmic debt from grace. And then it goes deeper into the root, and that's where the challenge lies, because the root is where you accept manifestation for what it is. Your relationship to manifestation, your relationship to your sexuality, your relationship with your body. If you don't do this and try to raise Kundalini alone, you will find that the upper energy is going to create so much pain that you will start doing what the Hindus do in some of their traditions, not all of them, where they say, well, when it moves through these barriers, you have to reject the earth first, and then you reject other people, and then you reject your ego, and so you reject everything and you're enlightened. But that's that's the path of escape. So essentially, if you open up to grace, paradoxically, those who want to escape, hey man, the result is the same. Instead of going to God, why don't you invite God to come to you? The result is the same. but I'm still on this fucked up planet. You know, no, you're not. You're in a different timeline, because the timeline begins to change when you start accept grace. And if it begins to change for you, then everything else is open to the same option. You can't go alone to another timeline. It's not like there are ready-made worlds. The worlds are there in potential, like water that hasn't turned to ice and they don't have form. It's just like another track that hasn't been recorded yet. But you know, and it's an analogy. You get away from all of this, you're not really leaving anything. You're dissolving, you know, the pattern, and you're bringing it and you're reestablishing it somewhere else. It's the same continuum. You know, nothing is lost, nothing is denied. Eventually, all of the old crap is going to come to you, because when you go to paradise, you're going to carry your baggage with you. It's just that you don't have to carry it in your hands. You can ask the divine porter to come, and divine UPS to slowly mail it to you piecemeal so you can handle it. You know, that's the whole thing. These things are not going to be avoided or escaped, but there are so many alternatives. And for example, look at your life. But before I say that, people who have Kundalini crisis may be pushing too hard. They may not have really reached the root chakra. They have been trying to, like, you know, they're so busy trying to raise that they haven't gotten deep enough yet. The Hindus say don't go below the root. I say, of course, you have to get the legs and the knees and the ankles, your wrists. You know, just as your legs anchor into the earth and move all the way down, your arms anchor into the atmosphere. They're your wings, your shoulder blades. If you look at the energy field coming out of your shoulder blades, it comes out like two angel wings. The same thing with the hips. If you look at the iconography, a lot of angels had wings under shoulders, wings under hips, wings under heads. You know, the seraphim had 6 wings or something, 3 pairs. The thing is that these angels are actually depictions of mystics in the etheric realm. Aside from being independent beings, they're the higher selves of all of us. You wanted to say something?
No.
Oh, okay. I saw your mouth moving.
I'm listening.
Okay. So in any case, all of these things are part of our potential. But the easiest way to relate to all of this complexity and the Kundalini stuff, because you do, when it starts vibrating, the first thing that happens is that the goddess says, oh, have you accepted the material plane? Before your ego and relationships, have you accepted the material plane? Fuck the bankers, forget about that, you know. Sorry for the potty mouth for some people, but we're talking about earthy subjects here. We're not talking about abstractions. So you accept your own sexuality as an emanation of your being and your connection to the planet. The feeling, the tingling, the electrification of life. The fact that manifestation is alive. It's not a bunch of things or processes, you know. It's a very intellectual word. It's alive, you know. And you say that with the passion that Dr. Frankenstein used in the movie when his own, creation came alive. It's alive. In an orgasmic manner. It's a perpetual orgasm. The problem is that orgasm is not complete. The union between heaven and earth is not complete. Somebody is keeping God and Goddess from having sex. You know, they haven't had their proper orgasm yet. There's been a partial sperming, you know, that's created incomplete beings. We have not yet been infused with our true identity, but this depends on us. It's not just upon those aspects. However, we are learning to interact with those aspects. We talked before the conversation about, you know, this relationship with the woman you spoke about, and I said, look, man, you're about bridges. So you're going to probably move into a bridge relationship before you move on, maybe to another bridge, depending on your situation. The good thing is that this is a positive bridge rather than the negative bridges you may have had in the past, or bridges where you didn't even know what kind of bridge you wanted because you had certain premises that were not true for you, but were, you know, and still a relationship has to be this, I have to do it this way, but part of you didn't want that. And so that conflict, you know, created a void, and the void created a compensation projected onto somebody else's insincerity. Insincerity within us will attract insincerity within outside. It's all about resonance. However, it helps a spiritual person, especially, or esoterically inclined or whatever, can relate to Goddess as much as they relate to the divine, heavenly, spiritual, abstract. I say try it. I mean, you don't have to be a pagan or anything like that. You can be a monotheist and say one God has two aspects. It's just that one aspect is below our feet and the other aspect is above our heads in a manifest manner. And our sexuality is not just of the goddess, it's just our religion's, hey, how many people will admit that God in heaven has a big cock? How many people will admit in a spiritual context? How many people will admit that God in heaven is a horny dude? How many people will admit that there is a sexual fertility involving the divine light? Pagans in the past did. The rain, when it was raining, it fertilized the earth and all of this. But they, and for them it was cool. They made jokes about it. They laughed about it. The maypole is a dance. That's a big phallus, of course. And most people will laugh about it today. But the thing is, they're being taught to deride it. Derisive laughter, cynical laughter, because they feel their own pain and don't know what to do about it. You cannot fully accept sexuality if you're still messed up inside about it. And the only way to not be messed up inside, one way, is basically to look at yourself and say, look, I'm a rape victim. Maybe not physically, in some way, something, maybe it's a mind rape, a heart rape, something. I'm a rape victim. How do you treat rape victims? You treat them very gently and with care. If you're a rape victim and you want to heal, what do? You find something you can trust. You try to establish trust. You try to establish an environment where it can move slowly. There are parts of the goddess in ourselves that are hurt. These are the parts that are not moving. This is where desire doesn't respond, where we don't even know what we want, where we think we know what we want, but the sexual, if you really feel desire, it's a powerhouse of energy. I mean, you say, well, we don't create our own reality. Well, if you feel that powerhouse of energy, and sexuality with another person is a great way to jumpstart it, but sexuality with another person is that. It's like an accelerator. It's a cool accelerator. And you want to do it frequently because you're always accelerating. But in the meantime, you can manifest in other ways because you have your batteries charged, that powerhouse, that creativity. Your brain works far more. Sex, I read an article in Magical Blend magazine. It was called Sex, Nature's LSD. So the same chemicals that are hallucinogenic, DMT, all of these things are poured into the brain, the natural hallucinogens, through prolonged sex. We're talking about stimulation, minimal 40 minutes, minimal, constant stimulation. Chakras, any position you want. All positions are cool as long as you feel they're right. You want to start with the basic room position. That's going to really harmonize and balance out everything. But the point is that we have not moved to be creative about merging take that pornographic, crazy, mechanical sex, bring it in, take the spiritual, abstract, overly peaceful, tantric sex, bring it in, fuse them together, remove the parts you don't like, be an alchemist, be a cook. When you pray to the goddess, pray with your desire. You pray to the goddess. Your natural videos and your own private things were prayers to the goddess. You don't have to say, oh, goddess. No, your desire acknowledged is a prayer to the goddess because that is resonance. God then has space to come in and illuminate you and allow you to realize not just what your desires are, but to discern between what you truly want, what you don't want, and how you can go about it, and what the true principles are. We associate and establish and deal with economics and this and that and the other. And I say this, look, man, if you follow your bliss, take Joseph Campbell literally, follow your bliss. It's not an abstract thing. What turns you on? If it's sex that turns you on, go deep into what the hell sex is. You may have to go to hell, on earth in some way, internally as opposed to externally, to discover this. But you can actually, I've discovered you can resonate with anybody if you want to. Resonance is simply a matter of, well, if you find, for example, if I look at a woman and she's incredibly attracted to me, but she's a bitch and she's shallow and she's whatever, right? Well, I can resonate with her, but I have to take on all of her issues. Do I want to do that? That's another story. The woman you're with acts, as you said, like a high priestess. She takes on, like those, you know, temple priestesses that were able to take on the energies of other people, process them, give them to the goddess, and give the man almost like a divination. You know how tarot readers, they say, well, your path is, you know. When you move through an experience with such a woman, you will come out knowing what your next step is, sexually and relationship-wise. It will be far clearer because you will have taken away the idea that you're not adequate, or you're not adequate as you are, or, you know, and you will also carry the scent of a woman who endorses you for other women. If they may be confused about your own conflicts as you resonate them, this time they will say, you know, oh, wow, you know, somebody's accepted him and he's got the endorsement of somebody who knows what they're doing, what they're saying, what they're idealizing.
And this, of course, is all at the subconscious level.
Oh, of course. But you may talk about these things with her. They may come up and, you know, it's subconscious, but it's also comes up as revelations, and you can feel it and say, well, it's as if it's like this. However, you know, when you're looking at things archetypally or mystically, you are looking at the subconscious. You are making the subconscious conscious.
Yes, indeed.
So the world that I describe may sound very strange, you know, but for me, you know, I sense the subconscious consciously in a lot of ways. So from where I stand, you pray to the goddess is answering your prayer and giving you a kind of surrogate relationship. She's also giving you the other relationship with the woman, who basically, you know, the impression that I got from the woman was that the dissonance itself brought out shadows in both of you. And I kind of perceived the shadows. And the shadows have to do with each person's sense of inadequacy and all of this, but also with the limits of each person. We confuse often our wounds are at our boundaries of self. It's like when you cut your arm off, you know, the stump that's left is a boundary. So when you meet another person at your own boundary of where you are willing to go or where you haven't gone before, and you meet their boundary, there is a lot of wounding there, and that wounding comes together. If I try to describe that wounding, it can come out as criticism or overt analysis sometimes. But if I look back on it, it comes out like you described it. You know, basically, well, the deeper intent is basically, because that's what it felt in the sense of, well, this is something that shows a rejection that wasn't really a rejection. Basically, well, you have to take the plus and the minus. The minus is very good. Dissonance and resonance.
You know, about rejection, when someone tells me the truth from their point of view, not truth that I want to hear, but wherever they are, when they tell me that, it doesn't feel like rejection anymore. It's when someone walks away and refuses to communicate, then it feels like rejection. That's from my experience.
Exactly. You can, you know, sometimes we don't go deeper into the experience of rejection because most of the time a person whispers it in their own subconscious. I'm rejecting you because I'm afraid, or you just don't turn me on, or there's dissonance between us and all of this, but they're afraid to say it because they're afraid that they're going to get it back. Many people want to dish out rejection because they've experienced pain so much, they want to start dishing it out. It's like a child being punished. This happened to me when I was a child. I would spill milk and get slapped. When my parents would spill milk, nobody would slap them. And once I went up and hit my parents over the head, you know, how come you guys don't get slapped over the head when you spill milk and I do? You know, there's a sense of injustice and a sense of abuse here. But if that was clarified for me, then it wouldn't be like that because the reality I created would be harmonized differently. People don't communicate because people are so full of pain, they can't really communicate, they start venting. You know, people who go into tantric retreats, for example, or any kind of false spirituality may, you know, they are not told how to handle their pain. they're told to release it, to deny it, you know. And when you have sex with other people, you carry on their energy. You're gonna, you know, whether you're resonating or dissonating at a cellular level, you're gonna take it on. And you can do that if you have enough of an energy body awakening, a kundalini awakening. There's autoerotic practices that can prepare you for sex in a meditative manner. That can help greatly with any kind of you know, insecurities and stuff like that. But at the same time, the whole point is that you know, unless you're able to take on the other person for who they are, which means you have had to have taken on yourself first, you know, there's going to be that feeling that you are being treated in a way that's non-communicative. They're like dumped. It's going to seem like a trash dump on your head or a crap dump, you know, even though it's not, because if you were able to open up more, you would see that this is the only way a person can communicate. If you don't like it, you have a choice to start, and you should make that choice. We have a responsibility to make that choice. Know thyself is the first thing. Feel thyself. Desire thyself is the first thing before any kind of all of these things are cliches. But the whole point is that if you can understand the spontaneous, natural connection with the goddess without having to resort to paganism or feminism or any kind of guilt tripism or castrationism, you know, then you're on your way to healing. Healing desire is the first step and the main step in everything. And the thing is, the establishment, you know, for all of these people who say, you know, what do we do? Well, on an esoteric level, this kind of thing is not just inwardly. You're actually doing a relationship with somebody. This is the next step from the person who heals themselves inwardly and manifests and goes inside all of this. The next step is to start relationships in your environment. And if you can hold an intimate relationship with another person, then, you know, you have the three necessities. You have yourself, you have another, the other side, and you have the connection between you. These three necessities allow you to take your energy to the world. And so you can begin, if you have that kind of relationship. The thing is, most people who are into sexuality are not experimenting, in my opinion, much with manifestation, with the creation of worlds, as you say. Of course you can create worlds. The worlds you will begin to create are energy manifestations. In occultism, they call it the magical child. When two people come together, they always create a magical child. A magical child is the thought form or the sentient presence of their union, and that becomes an independent. If they continue the relationship, that sentient presence will grow. Or they can put that sentient presence into any kind of intention they want and nourish it. But that's another story. I might talk about it. But there's so much potential. I know I've gone over, but this topic is so deep and so widespread.
So interesting.
You know, well, I'm glad. I hope it holds people's interest. Because there's nothing greater, you know, if somebody says, well, you want to save the world? Just have real sex. You know, real sex with everything. It's just that the variations of it, you know, depend on what you're doing. And you never, and the idea behind sex is consent. Even if somebody doesn't openly consent because they're hurt, then healing interaction can help draw out the consent that lies in everyone at the level that represents them. You don't go around molesting children claiming consent, but you can resonate with the child in such a way that they can become comfortable with not only you but with all of life if you feel that they have barriers. And this is one of the best ways to decondition yourself and help decondition other people. Just think about all the hang-ups we have. But the thing is, like you know, you say, well, I've been alone for so long and I've, you know, this and that and the other, and I need, you know, a relationship. And it's like, yes, you will be alone for as long as you need to be. And you have had certain trial relationships that had shown you why prematurely stepping out of that phase was not, you know, in your best interest. But now you've reached the point where, especially synchronized with the whole cosmos, where you can actually move into a whole new horizon. And you can notice that this event structure, this time, your personal unfolding of events, is almost like a shift that's moving you closer into timeline 1 because of the possibilities. True sex is timeline 1. And with that, I'm going to close this, and hopefully we can share some more conversations on this topic. I find it a lot more interesting than the socio-political stuff myself, actually.
Yeah, it is. Thank you, Aristo, very much. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to stop the recording now, and you can stay on if you'd like.
Okay, sure.
Okay.